Welcome to West Film, where every movie has a story worth telling. From heart-pounding action to twisty mysteries and dramas that stick with you, we dig into the plot, the characters, and the moments that make each film worth your time. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's jump into today's movie. This is West Film. Your story starts here. Dirty Dancing, the film that became a phenomenon for Patrick Swayze. Dirty Dancing wasn't just an early career highlight, it became the defining role of his life. He saw Johnny Castle as one of the most important parts he ever played. Before the film, Swayze had already made a name for himself as an actor through movies like The Outsiders, Red Dawn, and Young Blood. What set him apart from other leading men of the era was his serious dance background. He'd trained as a dancer long before acting made him famous, which gave him precisely the skill set Johnny Castle needed. Swayze brought genuine physical confidence to the role without ever making it look easy. Johnny commands the dance floor, but he's also acutely aware of his precarious social standing. He entertains wealthy guests who enjoy his company while quietly looking down on him. Swayze conveys the tension through posture, expression, and flashes of frustration. His dancing gives Johnny authority, while his quieter moments expose the insecurity underneath. Because Swayze could actually perform the choreography, the film never had to fake the illusion that Johnny was a seasoned professional dancer. His chemistry with Jennifer Grey became the heart of the movie. The two had worked together before on Red Dawn, and that experience hadn't been entirely smooth. There was real tension between them. Their relationship wasn't naturally easy, but their screen test revealed an undeniable spark, both romantic and physical. Dirty Dancing transformed Swayze's career overnight. Johnny Castle turned him into a romantic leading man and an international heartthrob, earning him a Golden Globe nomination and opening the door to major roles in films like Roadhouse and, later, Ghost, another massive romantic hit. The movie also showcased his musical talent through She's Like the Wind, a song Swayze performed himself. Few actors of that era could combine acting, dancing, romantic appeal, and music as seamlessly as he did. Jerry Orbach plays Dr. Jake Houseman, Baby's father. By 1987, Orbach was already a seasoned performer with a long theatrical copyright copyright and major Broadway success behind him, exactly the kind of gravitas needed to make Jake more than just a stern father copyright. He gives the character warmth and intelligence in the early scenes, which makes Baby's admiration for him believable and makes their later falling out all the more painful, since the film had already established real affection between them. Dirty Dancing remains one of Orbach's best-known film roles, though his most iconic part was still ahead of him. He later became a household name playing Detective Lenny Briscoe on Law & Order, introducing himself to an entirely new generation of viewers as one of television's most memorable detectives. Cynthia Rhodes plays Penny Johnson, Johnny's professional dance partner. Rhodes was an ideal fit for the role because she was both an actress and a genuinely skilled dancer, having already appeared in dance-centered films like Flashdance and Staying Alive, as well as opposite Tom Selleck in Runaway. That background gives Penny instant credibility whenever she moves, so there's never any doubt she's spent years dancing professionally. Penny also carries one of the film's heaviest storylines, her pregnancy, and the dangerous circumstances surrounding her illegal abortion push the movie well beyond a typical summer romance. Rhodes brings dignity and vulnerability to the role, helping audiences feel the economic precarity faced by the resort's working-class performers. After a string of prominent roles in the 1980s, Rhodes largely stepped back from acting, making Dirty Dancing one of the performances she's best remembered for. When Dirty Dancing hit theaters in 1987, few people predicted that a modestly budgeted romance set at a summer resort would become one of the most beloved films of its generation. Its cultural footprint eventually stretched far beyond its box office numbers, shaping popular music, dance trends, fashion, and the public images of both Swayze and Grey. What kept it relevant for decades, though, were the deeper questions buried beneath its accessible love story about class, gender, personal freedom, and reproductive rights. One of the film's biggest cultural achievements was making partner dancing feel exciting to a mainstream, younger audience at a time when pop music and music videos dominated. Dirty Dancing framed dance as something intimate, rebellious, and emotionally raw. Johnny and Baby don't just perform routines together. Dancing becomes the language through which their attraction grows, trust builds, and Baby discovers a confidence she didn't have at the start of the summer. That influence rippled through dance schools, weddings, TV competitions, and countless attempts to recreate the film's choreography. The final dance sequence became especially iconic. Johnny lifting Baby overhead turned into one of the most recognizable images in film history, instantly familiar even to people who've never seen the movie. Couples have recreated the lift at weddings, parties, on television, in commercials, and across the internet, sometimes as a heartfelt tribute, sometimes as comedy. Once they realize how hard the move actually is. The line "Nobody puts Baby in a corner," delivered by Johnny just before the climactic performance, took on an equally extraordinary life of its own, becoming shorthand for refusing to let someone be ignored, controlled, or underestimated. It's been quoted, parodied, and referenced endlessly across television, comedy, advertising, and everyday conversation, a proof of just how deeply the film embedded itself in popular culture. The soundtrack played a huge role in that lasting influence. Dirty Dancing blended songs from the early 1960s, matching its setting with new recordings made for 1980s audiences, and instead of undermining the period atmosphere, the mix strengthened it. Older viewers got a wave of nostalgia, while younger audiences heard contemporary songs that felt right at home in a major romantic film of their own era. The standout example is "I've Had the Time of My Life," performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. Used during the climactic final dance, the song became inseparable from the film and turned into a lasting celebration anthem, eventually winning the Academy Award for Best Original Song. Other recordings from the soundtrack became hits too, and Swayze's own performance of "She's Like the Wind" deepened the connection between the actor and the film's musical identity. The movie also sparked renewed interest in older songs. Tracks like "Be My Baby" and "Do You Love Me" found new audiences thanks to the film and its wildly successful soundtrack, which showed how a movie's music could become a commercial product in its own right rather than just background support. The film's historical setting matters just as much as its music. The story unfolds in 1963, placing its characters right at the tail end of one cultural era, just before enormous social upheaval hit the United States. Baby comes from a comfortable family that expects her to pursue education, responsibility, and respectable achievement. Johnny comes from a working-class world where a single accusation or a wealthy guest swimmer can cost him his job. Their romance crosses personal boundaries, sure, but social ones too. Kellerman's Resort operates almost like a miniature version of an older American social order. Wealthy families expect carefully organized, respectable entertainment, while privileged young staff members are encouraged to mingle with guests and working-class performers like Johnny occupy a far less secure position. That contrast lets the film quietly interrogate ideas about respectability. Robbie looks educated and socially acceptable but behaves selfishly, while Johnny is judged harshly despite proving his loyalty again and again. One of the film's most historically significant threads is Penny's unplanned pregnancy and the abortion that follows. Because the story takes place a decade before Roe v. Wade legalized abortion nationwide, Penny is forced into an unsafe procedure performed by someone unqualified, and the aftermath is genuinely frightening. The film doesn't treat this as an abstract political issue. It shows, plainly, the real danger faced by a woman without money, power, or safe medical options. That kind of directness was unusual for a mainstream 1980s romance, and it gives Baby's involvement extra weight. She borrows money from her father without explaining why, helps Penny through the crisis, and eventually brings her physician father in to treat her when complications set in. Baby's choices put her at odds with the moral assumptions of the adults around her, marking her shift from sheltered adolescence toward a more complicated understanding of adulthood. Gender expectations get challenged elsewhere too. Baby starts out awkward and inexperienced, while Johnny radiates physical confidence and charisma, but Baby isn't simply waiting around to be rescued. She actively steps into his world, helps his friends, confronts injustice, masters difficult choreography, stands up to her father, and ultimately takes ownership of her decisions. Behind the scenes, the making of Dirty Dancing is almost as compelling as the film itself. What became one of the most beloved romances of the 1980s started out as a modest, low-budget project that no one expected to turn into a phenomenon. The crew worked with limited resources, a punishing dance schedule, unpredictable weather, and two lead actors whose relationship wasn't always smoother, yet many of those obstacles fed directly into the raw energy and authenticity audiences ended up responding to. The story's roots were deeply personal for screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein. She'd grown up visiting Catskill Mountain resorts with her family in the early 1960s. Her father was a doctor, and she herself had competed in dance contests as a young woman. Those memories became the foundation for Baby Houseman, her family, the resort setting, and the hidden world of after-hours dancing happening behind the scenes of a respectable family vacation. Bergstein had previously written It's My Turn, 1980. Which originally included an erotic dance sequence that was ultimately cut. Losing that scene left her increasingly drawn to building an entire story around dance, and that idea eventually grew into Dirty Dancing. The script wove romance together with surprisingly weighty subject matter for what looked, on the surface, like a nostalgic summer movie: class division, unplanned pregnancy, unsafe abortion, and shifting dynamics between parents and children. Director Emil Ardolino was a natural fit for the project thanks to his background filming dance for television and documentaries. He understood that choreography loses its power when it's chopped up by rapid editing, so he made sure the camera gave Swayze and Gray enough space and time for their dancing to actually tell the story. Casting Johnny Castle was critical to the whole project. Swayze brought a rare combination of acting chops, physical charisma, musical talent, and serious dance training. His mother, Patsy Swayze, was a dancer and choreographer, and Patrick had trained seriously before injuries nudged his career toward acting instead. That background meant the production had a leading man who could genuinely dance, not just fake it convincingly for the camera. Jennifer Grey and Swayze already knew each other from Red Dawn, and that prior experience hadn't been entirely comfortably. Grey reportedly had reservations about working with him again. But their screen test revealed real chemistry, and whatever tension existed between them off-camera ended up working in the film's favor. Baby and Johnny spend much of the movie challenging, irritating, and gradually learning to trust one another, and the slightly unpredictable energy between the two actors made those scenes feel authentic. One famous behind-the-scenes moment happens during a rehearsal where Johnny repeatedly runs his hand down Baby's arm and Gray can't stop laughing. That reaction was completely real. Gray was genuinely ticklish, and Swayze's mounting frustration at the interrupted takes was real too. Ardolino recognized how authentic the moment felt and kept it in the finished film. Another memorable scene has Johnny balancing on a fallen log while Baby tries, and fails, to copy him. These outdoor training sequences deliberately look less polished than the final performance. Here Baby falls, struggles, laughs, and slowly gets better. And Gray wasn't presented as an instantly gifted dancer, which mattered for the character's believability. Her progress needed to feel earned. The famous lake rehearsal, where Johnny and Baby practice the lift in the water, created its own challenges. The water was freezing, and the actors had to power through take after take despite the cold. The finished scene looks romantic and effortless, which makes the discomfort behind it all the more impressive. Although the story is set in the Catskills of New York, Most of the filming actually took place elsewhere, primarily at Mountain Lake Lodge in Virginia and Lake Lure in North Carolina. These locations supplied the forests, cabins, lakefronts, and resort architecture the story needed, and editing blended the different real-world locations so seamlessly that they read as one continuous resort. Weather posed another challenge. The production had to maintain the illusion of summer even as the seasons began to shift, sometimes altering or repainting leaves and asking actors to look comfortably warm despite much colder actual temperatures. Since the whole story hinges on a summer vacation, keeping that illusion intact was essential. The story beneath its easygoing summer romance surface, Dirty Dancing, is carefully built as both a coming-of-age story and a drama about social boundaries. Set in the summer of 1963, it follows 17-year-old Frances Baby Houseman as she travels with her parents and older sister, Lisa, to Kellerman's, an upscale resort in the Catskills. What starts as an ordinary family vacation gradually becomes the experience that reshapes Baby's understanding of love, adulthood, class, responsibility, and her own sense of self. The film opens by establishing Baby as smart, idealistic, and sheltered as she admires her father, Dr. Jake Houseman, and pictures a future spent helping others. At Kellerman's, though, she steps into an environment defined by carefully maintained social divisions. Wealthy guests enjoy organized entertainment while staff follow strict rules, and privileged young male employees are encouraged to socialize with guests in a way that working-class performers like Johnny Castle simply aren't. The story shifts direction when Baby, carrying watermelons to a staff party, stumbles onto the employees dancing in a way nothing like the polished entertainment offered to guests. There she meets Johnny, the resort's charismatic dance instructor, and Penny, his professional partner. Her entrance into an entirely different world, one that fascinates and unsettles her in equal measure, and her attraction to Johnny takes root before any real romance has begun. The central conflict kicks off with Penny's pregnancy. Robbie Gould, a waiter whose education and social standing make him look respectable, is responsible but refuses to take any real accountability. Penny has arranged an abortion, but it's scheduled for the same night she and Johnny are booked to perform at another resort. Missing that gig would cost them badly needed income. Baby steps in to help, first by quietly getting money from her father without explaining why, then by taking on something far more difficult, learning Penny's routine so she can dance in her place. That decision becomes the engine of the whole story. Dance stops being simple entertainment and becomes the vehicle for Baby's growth, pulling her physically and emotionally closer to Johnny with every rehearsal. The training sequences take up much of the film's middle section. Baby starts out struggling with timing, posture, and confidence, while an impatient Johnny worries about his livelihood. Slowly, their rehearsals loosen up, and their evolving physical connection mirrors their emotional and instructional touch turns intimate, frustration turns to humor, awkwardness turns to trust. Their performance at the Sheldrake Hotel serves as an important midpoint test. Baby handles most of the routine but can't quite land the lift. That's a deliberate choice. Even if she nailed it perfectly this early, there'd be nowhere left for her arc to go. Instead, the scene proves she's improved while reminding the audience her transformation isn't finished yet. When Baby and Johnny get back, things take a darker turn. Penny has developed dangerous complications from the abortion, and Baby realizes protecting the secret matters far less than saving her friend, so she brings in her father to help. Jake successfully treats Penny but wrongly assumes Johnny got her pregnant, and his attitude toward Johnny turns hostile. Baby is caught between her lifelong trust in her father and the knowledge that, this time, he's wrong. She knows Robbie is actually responsible, and that Johnny had only ever tried to protect his friend. It's a major turning point in her maturation. For the first time, she has to decide whether respecting her father means obeying him or standing up for what she knows is true. The romance between Baby and Johnny deepens in the aftermath. Baby had originally seen Johnny as confident and free, only to discover how economically precarious his position really is. Johnny had assumed Baby was just another privileged guest, only to find she's willing to risk her own reputation to help people with far less power than she has. A second crisis arrives through Vivian Pressman, an older married guest who's been pursuing Johnny. When he turns her down, she retaliates by accusing him of theft, putting his job on the line. Baby knows he's innocent because she was secretly with him at the time, but clearing his name means admitting to the relationship publicly. She chooses honesty anyway, telling her family the truth and sacrificing her respectable image in the process. Johnny is cleared, but the win is bittersweet. His relationship with the guest violates resort policy, and he's fired regardless. It's the film's emotional low point. A Baby has finally found the courage to defend him openly, yet she still can't stop the system from punishing him. Johnny's dismissal leads directly into one of Baby's most important confrontations with her father. She admits she lied to him but pushes back against his refusal to reconsider his judgment, to a painful exchange precisely because she still loves and respects him. Her growth here doesn't require rejecting her family, it means learning that people she admires can still be wrong. The story reaches its climax at the resort's end-of-season talent show. It looks set to wrap up without Johnny, leaving the romance unresolved until he suddenly walks back in, strides up to the Houseman family's table, and refuses to let Baby stay hidden in the background any longer. His declaration and nobody puts Baby in a corner sets up the film's final, triumphant reversal. Visual style and cinematography. Compared to many other major films of the 1980s, Dirty Dancing has a visual style that's relatively restrained, and that restraint turns out to be one of its greatest strengths. Director Emil Ardolino and cinematographer Jeffrey Jur focused on intimacy, movement, physical chemistry, and atmosphere rather than flashy technique, letting the actors' bodies do much of the storytelling. The result feels romantic and nostalgic while still carrying real energy and sensuality in its dance scenes. The setting itself establishes the film's visual world immediately: green landscapes, wooden buildings, open lawns, dining rooms, cabins, and mountain scenery come together to create an idealized picture of a 1963 American summer vacation. Families take part in organized games and social events while employees keep the resort's cheerful surface running smoothly on the outside. Everything looks controlled, safe, and respectable. That world is deliberately set against the spaces occupied by Johnny, Penny, and the other dancers. When Baby stumbles into the staff party, she crosses from the guests' orderly world into something darker, hotter, and far more physically expressive. Their bodies close together, movement charged and almost forbidden compared to the polite activities happening elsewhere in the resort. Visually, it's clear Baby has crossed an invisible boundary before she even understands what that boundary means. The camera's treatment of dance is central to why the film works, because Ardolino understood how much choreography loses when it's constantly broken up by editing. Dirty Dancing favors compositions that let audiences take in a dancer's full body and the space around them: legs, arms, posture, and rhythm all visible together, rather than fragmented like a distant stage show. Close-ups and medium shots come in when emotional intimacy takes priority. During Johnny and Baby's rehearsals, the camera moves fluidly between their movements and their expressions, treating a hand placed on a waist with the same weight as a complicated step. These lessons function simultaneously as dance instruction and romantic development, most memorably in the famous rehearsal scene where Johnny teaches Baby to hold her. Framey Gray's genuine laughter and Swayze's real frustration make the moment feel spontaneous, while the physical closeness of their bodies quietly tells its own story. Baby is learning to dance, but she's also learning to be comfortable with intimacy. The outdoor rehearsal montage widens the film's visual scope, with Baby and Johnny training on roads, in fields, and near the water. Moving outside the resort's boundaries suggests a kind of freedom from Kellerman's rules, giving the relationship room to grow somewhere less controlled. The log balancing scene is especially effective because balance becomes both a literal and visual metaphor. Johnny moves with total confidence while Baby struggles to keep up, wordlessly communicating the gap in their experience while giving the actors space to be playful together. The lake sequence reframes the famous lift entirely, moving it from a stage into open water. The wide, natural setting makes the characters feel temporarily removed from the resort's social world, and the water lets Baby fall without real consequence. A visual metaphor for a safer space in which to confront her fear. Lighting reinforces these emotional shifts throughout the film. Daytime scenes around the resort tend to be bright and open, fitting the public world of family activities, while evening dances and staff gatherings feel darker, warmer, and more intimate, with shadows and pools of light creating spaces where behavior loosens up. That shift from daylight to night mirrors Baby's own movement from innocence toward experience. The color palette reinforces the 1960s setting without tipping into caricature. Clothing, interiors, and vehicles suggest the period, while the natural greens and browns of the locations tie everything together visually. Baby's understated look establishes her early on as less glamorous than the experienced dancers around her, and costume and cinematography work together particularly well in the dance sequences. Johnny's dark clothing gives him a strong, defined silhouette that emphasizes his lines, while Baby's lighter outfits create visual contrast and emphasize her youth. By the final dance, their presentation becomes cleaner and more iconic, letting the choreography take center stage. The film also repeatedly uses observation as a storytelling device. Early on, Baby is mostly a watcher as she studies Johnny, the staff, Penny, and this whole new world she's just discovered, often positioned as an outsider looking in. As the story progresses, she gradually moves from the edges of the frame toward its center, a shift that culminates in the finale. The girl who spent the film watching becomes the one everyone else is watching. It's one of the film's most effective visual expressions of how far she's come. Music is so deeply woven into Dirty Dancing that it's hard to imagine the film without it. Where many romantic dramas use songs to underscore key moments, this film builds much of its identity around music itself, as songs establish the period, mark the divide between generations, generate sexual tension, drive the dance sequences, and express emotions the characters can't always put into words. The soundtrack eventually became a cultural phenomenon in its own right, and it played a huge part in keeping the film popular long after its theatrical run ended. Set in 1963, the film uses period-accurate early rock and roll, R&B, soul, and pop to create a sense of youthful energy simmering beneath the resort's controlled surface. Fitting, since the story unfolds at a moment when American popular culture was on the verge of major change. One of the most recognizable tracks is the Ronettes' Be My Baby, whose famous opening beat instantly conjures the early 60s. Rather than simply telling the audience when the story takes place, the film lets the music do that work, offering nostalgia for older viewers in 1987 and an energetic, lived-in atmosphere for younger ones. The staff party is one of the clearest examples of music driving the narrative. When Baby walks in carrying watermelons, she encounters dancing far more sensual than anything happening in Kellerman's public spaces, with the contours "Do You Love Me" powering the scene with infectious energy. The music tells the audience Baby has entered another world before she fully grasps what she's seeing. The contrast between the resort's public, family-friendly entertainment and the staff's private, freer dancing underscores the film's broader interest in social boundaries. Music becomes a way of breaking through the resort's carefully managed behavior. As Johnny starts teaching Baby, rhythm becomes central to their relationship. He needs her to stop overthinking every movement and start feeling the beat, and the training sequences, built on repetition, counting, physical contact, and timing, let the audience watch her improve without lengthy exposition. Songs like Otis Redding's Love Man and Bruce Channel's Hey Baby help turn rehearsal into flirtation, letting music carry the growing attraction between Baby and Johnny almost like a form of dialogue. One of the most intimate musical moments comes with Solomon Burke's Cry to Me, which accompanies a pivotal point in their relationship. Its soulful warmth gives the scene emotional depth and lets the characters stop teaching and arguing long enough to simply connect. Dirty Dancing also took the somewhat risky step of blending authentic period recordings with new songs written specifically for the 1987 release, a choice that, in theory, could have undercut the historical illusion but instead created a bridge between the story's era and the audience's own. Swayze's own recording of She's Like the Wind, which he'd co-written before the film, is a prime example. While it's never literally presented as Johnny singing, it expresses a longing and vulnerability that rounds out his otherwise physically confident screen presence. Eric Carmen's Hungry Eyes became similarly tied to Baby and Johnny's romance. Its polished 80s production stands apart from the period songs but still fits the film's romantic tone perfectly. The most important song of all, though, is I've Had the Time of My Life, performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. Playing over the climactic final dance, it functions almost like the movie's emotional thesis, building gradually alongside the choreography and the story's resolution. By the time it reaches its most powerful moment, the audience has already watched Baby struggle through her training, fail the lift once, fall for Johnny, stand up to her father, and watch Johnny get fired. So the final performance carries the full emotional weight of everything that came before it, with the music converting all those separate conflicts into one release. The successful lift is inseparable from the song's musical build. As Baby runs toward Johnny near the track's climax, the combination of movement and sound creates one of the most recognizable images in romantic cinema. Without the song, the lift would still be impressive. With it, the moment becomes triumphant. The Time of My Life went on to win the Academy Award for Best Original Song along with other major honors, and it's remained permanently linked to celebrations, weddings, and countless attempts to recreate the film's famous final dance. Beyond the songs themselves, the film's sound design is understated but effective. Footsteps, breathing, rustling fabric, bodies hitting the floor. During rehearsals especially, you can sense real effort. The dancing never feels weightless or effortless, because the performers visibly breathe hard, lose their balance, and physically struggle with the choreography. Reception and legacy. When Dirty Dancing came out in 1987, nobody could have predicted it would become a cultural phenomenon. It was made on a relatively modest budget by Vestron Pictures, a company better known for home video distribution than for producing major theatrical hits, and it didn't have anything like the expensive spectacle typically associated with a blockbuster. Audiences responded with remarkable enthusiasm on what looked, at first glance, like a small romantic dance film turned into a major box office success with an enormously popular soundtrack, eventually becoming one of the most enduring romances of its era. Critical reaction was more mixed than the audience response. Some reviewers praised the film's energy, chemistry, music, and emotional impact, while others found the story predictable or overly sentimental. An inexperienced young woman from a comfortable background falls for a man her family considers unsuitable, defies her parents, and comes out more independent, which is familiar dramatic territory by any measure. Still, even critics less enthusiastic about the script tended to acknowledge how effective the dancing was, and how much the leads carried the film. Jennifer Grey's performance was widely seen as one of the film's biggest strengths. Baby wasn't introduced as a glamorous heroine. She's awkward, idealistic, and often unsure of herself, and Grey's willingness to let the character look uncomfortable made her growth feel genuine rather than like a conventional makeover. Swayze, meanwhile, drew even more attention. Johnny Castle let him combine acting, dancing, physical presence, and romantic leading man charisma in a way few of his earlier roles had allowed, and that mix of toughness and vulnerability helped turn him into an international star. Throughout it all, the chemistry between Grey and Swayze remained the film's central draw, with their relationship evolving from tension and impatience into intimacy largely through movement rather than dialogue. Commercially, the film wildly exceeded expectations. Made for only a few $1 million, it earned many times that budget, and its success was especially notable given that it didn't lean on action, visual effects, or an existing franchisee. Word of mouth did most of the heavy lifting as viewers returned to see it again and again. The soundtrack became a phenomenon of its own, selling millions of copies and producing multiple hit singles. I've Had the Time of My Life became the film's musical signature, winning the Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and a Grammy, proof of just how far the film's music reached into mainstream culture. Swayze's She's Like the Wind became a hit single in its own right, and Eric Carmen's Hungry Eyes further cemented the film's romantic identity in listeners' minds. Award recognition for the film itself, outside of music, was fairly limited. It was never treated as a major prestige contender across the border, but Swayze and Gray both received notable attention for their performances, including Golden Globe nominations, underlining just how much the film rode on its central couple. Not every reaction was celebratory. Penny's abortion storyline drew particular attention for introducing a serious reproductive rights issue into what was marketed mainly as a romance. Set before abortion was legal nationwide, the storyline doesn't treat Penny's situation as an abstract debate. It shows plainly how money, gender, and legal restriction can put a vulnerable woman in real physical danger. Some viewers found this gave the film unexpected depth. Others found the seriousness jarring against its light romantic tone. Class politics also became a bigger part of later critical conversations. Johnny is judged repeatedly because of his background, while Robbie's education and social standing protect him despite his selfish behavior. And Kellerman's hierarchy lets wealthy guests act freely while employees remain vulnerable to accusation and dismissal. These observations led later critics to see the film as more socially aware than its reputation as a simple romantic fantasy suggested. The age and experience gap between Baby and Johnny has also become a point of more critical discussion over time, as attitudes toward power dynamics in romance have shifted since 1987. Why it endures. The legacy of Dirty Dancing stretches well beyond its original success, surviving through theatrical re-releases, home video, television broadcasts, soundtrack sales, stage productions, anniversary events, and merchandise. More than that, the film established a template combining romance, music, dance, nostalgia, and coming-of-age storytelling that countless later films would revisit. Part of its staying power comes from the simplicity of its core idea. Baby enters an unfamiliar world, meets Johnny, learns to dance, falls in love, pushes back against the expectations placed on her, and comes out more confident. That structure is easy to follow, but the film adds real depth through class conflict, family tension, sexuality, and Penny's pregnancy. Later dance films Save the Last Dance, Step Up, and others tell very different stories, but they lean on the same basic formula. Dance isn't decoration, it's a way of bringing people from different worlds together, letting romance develop through training, and resolving personal conflict through performance. Dirty Dancing wasn't the first film to connect romance and dance, but its massive success proved just how powerful that combination could be, and its influence shows up in how dance instruction gets photographed as romantic storytelling. To this day, physical correction and proximity becoming a natural excuse for two characters to enter each other's space. The final lift remains perhaps the film's greatest visual legacy, recreated endlessly in TV shows, commercials, comedy sketches, reality programs, weddings, talent competitions, and social media, sometimes sincerely, sometimes for laughs. Once people realize how hard it actually is, the dialogue has had a similar afterlife. Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner became one of the most quoted romantic movie lines of its era. now used more broadly to mean refusing to let someone be overlooked or controlled. Even a smaller linear baby's awkward "I carried a watermelon" became an affectionate shorthand for the universal experience of saying something ridiculous in front of someone you're trying to impress. That such a minor moment stuck in the cultural memory says a lot about how thoroughly the film's personality took hold. Home video was crucial to the film's long-term staying power. Dirty Dancing arrived just as VHS was changing how people watched movies, giving fans the ability to own the film, replay favorite scenes, learn the choreography, and pass it on to family, ideal for a film built around musical sequences that reward repeat viewing. Later DVD, Blu-ray, digital, and anniversary releases kept that cycle going, each one offering a chance to reintroduce the film to new audiences. Attempts to expand the franchise met mixed success. A 1988 television series reworked the concept with a different cast and didn't last long, underscoring just how hard it was to replicate the original's chemistry. A theatrical follow-up, Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights, arrived in 2004. Set in late 1950s Cuba and telling an entirely new story rather than continuing Baby and Johnny. Swayze appeared in a small role as a dance instructor as a nod to the original, but the film never came close to matching its predecessor's impact. The story also found a second life on stage with Dirty Dancing, the classic story on stage, performed internationally to audiences well beyond the US. And a 2017 television remake introduced the story to a new generation, although any new cast inevitably faced comparisons to Gray and Swayze, whose chemistry had become so central to the original's reputation that matching it was always going to be a tall order. Ultimately, the film's staying power can't be explained by dancing, music, or romance alone. Audiences built a genuinely personal relationship with it, and what they took from Baby's summer at Kellerman's has shifted along with the culture around them. Some remember it primarily as a romantic fantasy, others see a coming-of-age story, a portrait of class division, a story about female independence, or simply a nostalgic snapshot of a particular American moment. For audiences who saw it in 1987, the film offered nostalgia on multiple levels, so the 1963 setting meant many adult viewers could recall the music, fashion, and family resort culture on screen firsthand. But the film isn't simply celebrating the past. 1963 sits right before enormous cultural upheaval in America, and viewers who knew what was coming could sense that Baby was standing at the edge of major change here in family authority, class structure, sexual morality, and popular culture alike. That awareness gives the film a subtle undercurrent of characters standing on the brink of transformation. Younger viewers in 1987 often connected with it differently, seeing in Baby the familiar desire to have adults recognize her as capable of making her own decisions. Her arc doesn't hinge on one dramatic act of rebellion, it builds gradually through mistakes, secrets, responsibility, attraction, disappointment, and confrontation. Much of her appeal comes from the fact that she isn't introduced as glamorous or socially confident. Her visible discomfort at the staff party makes her accessible, letting the audience discover Johnny's world alongside her rather than watching an already self-assured heroine breeze through it. That awkwardness fuels the romantic fantasy at the film's core. Johnny is experienced, confident, and initially intimidating, while Baby is uncertain, yet he comes to recognize qualities in her that others overlook, offering the appealing fantasy of being truly seen by someone from an exciting world outside ordinary life. The romance also works because it crosses real social lines. Baby's family expects education and achievement from her, while Johnny survives on physical labor and performance, aware that wealthy guests hold real power over his livelihood. Their attraction pushes against the assumption that people should stay within the categories assigned to them. How audiences read Johnny has shifted over time. On release, Swayze's performance was widely embraced as the ideal romantic rebel, tough but sensitive, confident but capable of real vulnerability, willing to make a public stand for the woman he loves. Later viewers have increasingly read the character through the lens of economic insecurity, Johnny may look powerful on the dance floor, but within Kellerman's social hierarchy he actually holds very little authority. Baby, too, has been reassessed through evolving ideas about female characters. Her arc isn't defined solely by winning Johnny's love. She helps Penny before any romance with Johnny has fully developed, stands up to Robbie, lies to protect people who need help, takes responsibility for those lies, and eventually confronts her father. Her moral awakening matters just as much as her romantic one. Baby's relationship with her father tends to resonate differently as viewers age. Younger audiences may see Jake mainly as the obstacle standing between Baby and Johnny, while older viewers more easily understand his fear. He genuinely believes he's protecting his daughter and is simply missing crucial information about what happened with Penny. His real mistake isn't caring too much, it's becoming too confident in a judgment based on incomplete facts. That creates an unusual dynamic where a viewer's sympathies can shift over time. A teenager may strongly identify with Baby's frustration at being judged, while the same viewer, years later, may understand Jake's anxiety better while still recognizing Baby was right to challenge him. The film makes room for both reactions at once, which helps explain why people keep returning to it at different points in their lives. Penny's storyline has also grown in significance over repeated viewings. Some viewers, initially drawn in by the central romance, only later register just how serious her situation is. Because the story is set before safe, legal abortion was available, and because her economic position leaves her especially vulnerable, her unwanted pregnancy carries consequences far removed from the resort's carefree surface. As debates around reproductive rights have continued to evolve, this storyline has repeatedly taken on renewed relevance for modern audiences. Character development. The film's emotional power rests heavily on its characters actually changing. Though remembered chiefly for its romance, music, and dancing, the people at the center of the story aren't the same by the end of the summer as they were when they arrived at Kellerman's, and that's true not just of Baby, but of Johnny, Jake, Penny, and several supporting characters as well, all of whom reveal new sides of themselves as the story unfolds. Frances Baby Houseman starts out intelligent but sheltered, an idealistic 17-year-old who admires her father deeply and assumes his moral judgment is always sound. Her family has given her security and confidence in intellectual matters, but she has little real experience with romance, hardship, or the messy choices adults sometimes have to make. Her transformation begins the moment she discovers the staff party while carrying watermelons. Suddenly she's an outsider observing a world that's physically and socially unfamiliar, fascinated by Johnny, Penny, and the other dancers but visibly out of her depth. Penny's pregnancy pushes Baby from observing to acting. Rather than simply feeling sympathy, she gets money from her father and steps directly into the situation, agreeing to learn Penny's routine and perform in her place, a responsibility she's completely unprepared for, and the vehicle through which both her physical and emotional growth unfold. At first she treats dancing almost like an academic exercise, counting steps and following instructions while Johnny grows frustrated with her lack of natural rhythm. Gradually, though, she learns to trust her body, mirroring her broader shift from relying on others' rules to trusting her own judgment. Her relationship with Johnny accelerates that change. She starts out idealizing him as confident and free, only to discover how economically fragile his position really is, and comes to understand that confidence doesn't necessarily equal power. Her defining act of maturity comes when Johnny is falsely accused of theft. She could stay quiet to protect her own reputation, but instead she tells the truth, even knowing it exposes their relationship to her family. It's a striking contrast to earlier in the film, when fear kept her from being honest with her father. Now she's willing to accept real consequences to defend someone else. Johnny's arc is quieter but no less important. He appears completely self-assured at first, in total command of the dance floor and his own body, and Baby initially sees in him the confidence she lacks. As the story unfolds, though, it becomes clear that Johnny's confidence is partly a professional shield. He understands Kellerman's class system all too well. He knows wealthy guests can make accusations that management will believe without question, and he's learned to expect judgment from people like Jake Houseman, which breeds real anger and defensiveness. When Baby enters his world, he initially assumes she'll behave like any other privileged guest, blind to the real consequences employees face. She proves him wrong, helping Penny with nothing to gain, working hard through rehearsals, and eventually risking her family relationships to defend him. Her actions show him that he doesn't have to silently accept every judgment placed on him, which is why he's able to walk back into the finale and refuse the humiliation of his firing. The relationship transforms them both. Johnny teaches Baby physical confidence, and Baby gives Johnny the belief that he deserves to be respected and defended. Because that growth moves in both directions, the romance carries real weight. Dr. Jake Houseman goes through a significant arc of his own. At first he's Baby's moral hero, and their relationship is warm and affectionate. He clearly believes in her intelligence. The conflict begins when he treats Penny after her abortion goes wrong and wrongly assumes Johnny is responsible for the pregnancy. That mistake is understandable, since he's missing key information, but his refusal to reconsider his assumptions is the deeper problem. His judgment of Johnny is shaped by appearances. Robbie looks respectable, Johnny looks dangerous, and the truth turns out to be almost the exact opposite. Baby's confrontation with her father stings precisely because she isn't rebelling against someone unreasonably, she's challenging someone she genuinely loves. Eventually, Jake has to recognize that his daughter has developed her own independent moral compass, and his apology to Johnny near the end represents more than correcting a factual error. It's an acknowledgement that his own assumptions failed him. Penny Johnson's arc is less dramatic, since she begins the story as a more experienced adult, but her storyline gives the film much of its gravity. She initially reads as confident and highly skilled, and it's only once her pregnancy is revealed that the audience sees how genuinely vulnerable her position is, lacking the financial and social safety net the resort's guests take for granted. Her close friendship with Johnny also complicates the assumption that their physical partnership on the dance floor must automatically be romantic. Costume and production design. Dirty Dancing's costume and set design are key to transporting the audience back to the summer of 1963. Though released in 1987, the film needed to represent an earlier America without turning the setting into an exaggerated collage of period signifiers. It manages this through relatively restrained clothing, resort architecture, furniture, vehicles, hairstyles, and carefully chosen locations are details that establish the period while also revealing differences in class, personality, age, and social standing. Kellerman's itself is the most important piece of production design, since nearly the entire story unfolds within its grounds. The resort represents a protected vacation world for comfortable families, with lawns, cabins, dining halls, performance spaces, staff quarters, and surrounding landscape that together suggest a self-contained community where guests can spend an entire summer without engaging much with the outside world. The design reflects the resort's organized nature, a scheduled entertainment, games, dance lessons, meals, and evening shows, and that visual order reinforces Kellerman's social hierarchy. Everyone seems to have an assigned place, just as everyone has an assigned social role. That order stands in sharp contrast to the staff spaces Baby discovers, where the atmosphere shifts immediately into something more crowded, physical, and sensual. The production design doesn't need to spell out that Baby has crossed a social boundary. The shift in environment does that work visually. That contrast matters especially because Johnny straddles both worlds. Professionally, he's part of the entertainment offered to guests, but away from those duties he belongs to the staff's more freewheeling social scene, and the spaces around him reflect the tension built into his character. Highly visible at Kellerman's, but never truly accepted as an equal by the wealthy guests watching him perform. Baby's costumes track her development carefully. Early on, her clothing are shorts, simple tops, light blouses, cardigans. Casual summer wear emphasizes youth, practicality, and innocence, reinforcing the sense that she's arrived as a daughter on a family trip rather than someone seeking romantic adventure. Jennifer Grey's natural, unglamorous look matters because Baby's transformation was never meant to feel like a dramatic makeover. She stays recognizably herself even as her confidence grows. As she gets pulled into dance rehearsals, her clothing loosens up to allow real movement, letting the audience track her posture, footwork, and growing self-assurance directly through costume. One of her most memorable looks comes during the final dance, a simple, pale dress elegant enough to mark the moment's importance without overpowering the choreography, its flowing skirt adding visual energy to every turn. Johnny's clothing tells a different kind of story: fitted shirts, dark trousers, simple working-class garments that emphasize his physicality, since movement is central to who he is. Swayze's silhouette stays clearly defined throughout, letting the audience read Johnny's confidence before he even speaks, and his dark clothing visually separates him from Baby in several key scenes, underlining the gaps between them: experience and innocence, employee and guest, outsider and protected daughter. As their relationship deepens, though, the choreography increasingly places these visually contrasting figures within the same physical rhythm. Penny's costumes communicate professional polish. Unlike Baby, she already knows exactly how to carry herself as a dancer, and her clothing and posture reflect discipline and familiarity with performance. That makes her physical vulnerability after the abortion land even harder. A character defined by total control suddenly appears fragile. Lisa Houseman's wardrobe helps distinguish the sisters, leaning more decorative and traditionally feminine to reflect her interest in conventional romance and appearance, quickly establishing a different personality without needing much dialogue. Jake and Marjorie Houseman's clothing reinforces their status as a respectable middle-class family in the early 1960s. Are controlled, appropriate, supportive of Jake's authority as both physician and father, while Marjorie's wardrobe reflects the polished but relaxed expectations of an affluent family vacation. Costume choices also reinforce Kellerman's broader social divisions. Guests wear vacation clothing suited to leisure, while employees wear garments tied to work and performance, and the privileged young waiters encouraged to socialize with guests are visually distinguished from Johnny and the entertainment. Staffer clothing becomes yet another thread in the resort's invisible hierarchy. Period hairstyles and makeup follow the same restrained philosophy, using recognizable 1960s details without turning every character into an exaggerated period symbol. Important, since the film needed to feel nostalgic without creating so much historical distance that the romance felt remote to a 1987 audience. The screenplay. Eleanor Bergstein's screenplay is one of the biggest reasons Dirty Dancing works as more than just a string of romantic scenes and dance numbers. It blends coming-of-age storytelling with romance, comedy, family conflict, class tension, and serious social issues. And its dialogue is generally direct rather than ornate, a simplicity that keeps the characters feeling emotionally immediate. Several lines became genuinely iconic, while quieter exchanges reveal just how carefully the script tracks Baby's evolving understanding of Johnny, her father, and herself. The script is largely built around Baby's perspective. When the Housemans arrive at Kellerman's, Baby sees the world through the values she's absorbed from her parents, expecting people to behave responsibly and assuming moral lines are fairly clear. The screenplay gradually complicates those assumptions, and the dialogue shifts accordingly. Early conversations reveal innocence and dependence, while later ones show Baby pushing back against people she once trusted without question. One of the script's real strengths is how efficiently it establishes character. Baby's family dynamic is clear almost immediately. Jake is loving, intelligent, protective, and especially close to baby Lisa is drawn to conventional romance and social life. Marjorie observes the family with warmth and humor. Because these relationships are set up quickly, later conflicts don't require lengthy explanation. Baby's entrance into the dancer's world produces one of the film's most memorable comic beats. So after carrying watermelons into the staff party and meeting Johnny, she blurts out, "I carried a watermelon." It's funny precisely because it's the kind of meaningless thing someone says when they're nervous, and it reveals more about Baby's state of mind than a more polished line ever could. That humor matters, keeping her transformation from turning too heavy too quickly. During rehearsals, Johnny's frustration collides with Baby's awkwardness, and their exchanges often sound like arguments between a demanding instructor and a struggling student until, gradually, the tone shifts. The same physical closeness that once felt uncomfortable starts to generate real attraction, and the script understands that romance doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. Many of Johnny and Baby's most important developments happen between the liners. A correction during rehearsal, an awkward pause, a look, a moment of shared laughter, or letting dialogue support the physical storytelling rather than constantly explaining it. Class tension surfaces through language too. Johnny knows the wealthy guests hold power over him, and his conversations reveal a man used to being judged, confident on the dance floor, guarded when discussing his own position. Baby initially can't understand why he expects the worst from people in her world, and their conversations slowly expose the gap between the life she's known and the one he actually lives. Robbie Gould offers a useful contrast. His education and social standing let him sound respectable, but his dialogue reveals real selfishness. The screenplay deliberately separates polished appearance from actual character. Johnny may be rougher around the edges and quicker to react emotionally, but his actions toward Penny show real loyalty, while Robbie, who has all the social credentials Jake might initially respect, refuses to take responsibility when Penny needs him most. Penny's pregnancy introduces a much darker tone. The script never treats it as a convenient misunderstanding designed to throw Baby and Johnny together. Penny's fear is grounded in money, employment, and a lack of real options, and once the abortion goes wrong, the consequences become immediate and physical, giving the script dramatic weight well beyond the central romance. Baby's conversations with her father carry some of the film's most important dialogue, since their relationship evolves without ever losing its underlying affection. Jake starts out as the person Baby trusts above anyone else. Once he misreads Johnny's involvement with Penny, Baby suddenly knows something he doesn't, forcing her to choose between staying obedient and standing up for the truth. The script never turns Jake into a simple villain. His anger comes from real concern for his daughter and incomplete information, which makes their conflict land harder emotionally. Baby isn't escaping an obviously cruel parent. She's learning that someone good and intelligent can still get something seriously wrong. Her confrontation with him after Johnny's firing shows just how far she's come. Here she owns her lie and the disappointment it caused, but she won't accept that this makes her father's judgment correct. The dialogue lets her take responsibility while still holding Jake to the same standard of honesty, and her maturity comes from understanding why she made her choices, not from pretending she made none. Johnny's dialogue reveals the insecurity underneath his physical confidence, too. Baby initially reads him as completely comfortable in his own skin, only to realize he's spent years being treated as though his worth depends entirely on how well he entertains wealthy people. His conversations with Baby expose just how deeply the treatment has affected him, which is what gives the film's most famous line its power. When Johnny walks back into the finale and declares, "Nobody puts Baby in a corner," the moment is simple and almost theatrical, but it lands precisely because the entire script has been building toward it. Baby has, in one sense or another, been placed in a corner throughout the film by her family's assumptions, by the resort's social hierarchy, by the expectation that Johnny would simply disappear after being fired. By pulling her into the center of the room, Johnny rejects all of that at once. Marketing and cultural rollout. The way Dirty Dancing was marketed offers a great example of a film growing far bigger than anyone initially expected. Heading into its 1987 release, it wasn't positioned as a big-budget Hollywood blockbuster backed by a massive ad campaign. No, it had a modest budget and was distributed by Vestron Pictures, a company best known for success in home video. Instead of leaning on spectacle or franchise recognition, the marketing had to sell romance, dance, music, and the chemistry between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. The title itself did a lot of heavy lifting. Dirty Dancing was short, provocative, and instantly memorable, hinting at something forbidden and sensual without spelling out exactly what the story involved, generating curiosity. Even though the film wasn't simply an erotic dance movie, the phrase referred literally to the style of dancing Baby discovers among the staff. But it also captured the divide between Kellerman's respectable public face and the freer world hidden just behind it. Promotional artwork leaned heavily on Baby and Johnny together. One of the most familiar images shows Grey and Swayze in an intimate dance pose, bodies close, eyes locked on each other, an image that instantly communicated the film's central appeal without requiring audiences to understand Penny's pregnancy, the class dynamics at Kellerman's, or Baby's conflict with her father before buying a ticket. The poster simply promised romance, chemistry, and dance. Swayze's physical presence became a genuine marketing asset, because he actually had serious dance training. Promotional photos and footage could highlight his movement without needing to disguise a performer's limitations, letting the campaign sell Johnny Castle as both a romantic fantasy and a genuinely skilled dancer. Grey offered a different kind of appeal. At Baby's relative lack of polish let audiences imagine themselves stepping into Johnny's world through her eyes, so the marketing could sell both fantasy and identification at once. Johnny is the thrilling figure waiting on the dance floor, Baby as the ordinary young woman who becomes his unlikely partner. Trailers and TV spots emphasized the film's most immediately appealing elements: dance sequences, romantic tension, energetic music, moments of conflict without needing to explain every serious plot thread, inviting audiences to expect an emotionally satisfying summer romance driven by music and chemistry. Word of mouth ultimately outpaced traditional advertising. Audiences responded so strongly to Grey and Swayze's chemistry that repeat viewings helped turn the film from a solid release into a genuine phenomenon, with the emotionally uplifting final dance leaving audiences buzzing as they left theaters. Music turned out to be perhaps the single greatest promotional engine the film had. The soundtrack let Dirty Dancing live on well beyond cinemas and TV spots, so every radio play was essentially free advertising. Record stores displayed the album prominently, and listeners who liked the songs got curious about the movie behind them. I've Had the Time of My Life, performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes, is the standout example. Inseparable from the climactic dance, it became a major hit that gave the film visibility across radio, record sales, and awards shows, and its Academy Award win added extra prestige that kept the film part of the cultural conversation well after its initial theatrical run. Eric Carmen's Hungry Eyes contributed another commercially successful romantic single, while Swayze's own recording of She's Like the Wind created a uniquely useful promotional link, since the film's male lead was also part of its musical identity, giving Swayze visibility in both film publicity and music promotion simultaneously. The soundtrack's massive sales proved just how valuable cross-promotion between film and music could be. It wasn't simply merchandise riding the movie's coattails, it became one of the primary engines driving the film's audience growth. Home video gave the film another major boost. Vestron's background in the video market proved especially valuable as Dirty Dancing built a life well beyond theater, so VHS let fans own the film outright and replay favorite scenes as often as they liked, which mattered enormously for a movie built around music and choreography. Fans could rewatch the final dance, study the moves, repeat favorite lines, and share the film with friends, helping it evolve from a theatrical hit into a long-term entertainment staple. Later releases on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital platforms, along with anniversary editions, kept that momentum going, each format offering a fresh opportunity to repackage the film, restore its quality, add bonus material, and reach audiences who'd missed it the first time around. Anniversary events became a recurring part of the film's ongoing promotion, with distributors and rights holders regularly drawing renewed attention through special screenings, commemorative releases, cast interviews, documentaries, and retrospective essay campaigns made easy by just how instantly recognizable the film's key scenes remained. The brand also expanded into live theater and other media over the years. Dirty Dancing in context. Dirty Dancing occupies an unusual space in the history of romantic and dance cinema, blending elements from several familiar genres without fully belonging to any single genre. It's a romance, a coming-of-age drama, a dance film, a period piece, and a story about class and family conflict all at once. Comparing it to other dance and romance films of its era helps explain why it developed such a distinctive identity, and why so many attempts to replicate its formulae have fallen short. One obvious point of comparison is Flashdance, 1983, which similarly links personal transformation to dance and became closely tied to a hit soundtrack. But Flashdance follows Alex Owens, a working-class woman chasing a professional dance career, while Dirty Dancing essentially flips that structure. A baby comes from comfort and steps into Johnny and Penny's working-class world. So dance isn't her professional ambition, it's how she discovers a different social reality altogether. Flashdance also leans into a highly stylized, music video-influenced visual approach, whereas Dirty Dancing feels more intimate, emphasizing the physical interaction between two bodies and treating imperfection as essential. A baby is allowed to look clumsy, miss steps, laugh, and fail, because the point isn't proving she can dance, it's showing how learning to dance changes her. Footloose, 1984, offers another useful comparison. There, dancing represents open rebellion against a community that has banned it outright. In Dirty Dancing, nobody has forbidden Baby from dancing, but the kind of dancing she discovers still represents something outside her family's respectable world. Both films link dance to freedom and resistance, but Footloose makes that conflict public and communal from the start, while Dirty Dancing keeps it private. Baby's rebellion begins in secrecy, only becoming a public statement during the finale. Saturday Night Fever provides a darker point of comparison, using dance to explore working-class frustration, masculinity, and the desire to escape. Johnny Castle shares something with that kind of character. His greatest power exists on the dance floor, and outside it, his social position remains fragile, but the tone couldn't be more different. Where Saturday Night Fever leans cynical, Dirty Dancing ultimately embraces romantic optimism, even while taking Johnny's economic vulnerability seriously. The film lets its final performance briefly overcome the social barriers that have held him back. West Side Story represents an older tradition where dance is fully woven into dramatic conflict, expressing rivalry, love, identity, and violence through choreography alone. Dirty Dancing works on a much smaller scale but shares that basic idea movement as narrative language, with Johnny and Baby's evolving relationship legible through how they dance together even when they're barely speaking. The film also belongs to a much older tradition of forbidden romance between people from different social worlds, a lineage stretching back long before modern cinema. What sets Dirty Dancing apart is how physically that social gap gets expressed. Johnny doesn't just tell Baby his world is different, he teaches her to move within it, and every lesson asks her to shed a little more of the caution built into her upbringing. Later films extend the same formula in different directions. Save the Last Dance similarly connects characters across social lines through training, attraction, and performance, though it leans harder into contemporary youth culture and personal ambition. Step Up, 2006, makes the pattern even clearer. pairing characters from different backgrounds through physical collaboration, much like Johnny and Baby, with dance forcing each of them to see qualities in the other that surface-level assumptions might have hidden. But the Step Up franchise increasingly treats choreography as spectacularly bigger, more technically dazzling, more competitive, whereas Dirty Dancing stays comparatively intimate. Its most famous dance matters because of everything Baby and Johnny have been through emotionally, not because it's the most technically demanding routine imaginable. Which is exactly why the final lift lands so hard. The audience has already watched Baby fail it once, so when she finally succeeds, the choreography becomes character development in real time. Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights offers perhaps the most direct point of comparison, since it deliberately revisits the original's core concept. Set in Cuba in 1958, it follows another young woman discovering romance and personal freedom through dance, with political instability playing a larger role in the background. Swayze's cameo as a dance instructor creates an intentional link to the original, but the film's more muted reception showed just how difficult that original chemistry was to reproduce. Dirty Dancing didn't succeed simply because it had attractive leads, a forbidden romance, and sensual choreography. Its lasting power comes from how completely all of those elements, along with real emotional stakes, came together at once.